Thank you for joining us. I'm Kent Justice, your host for This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition. And this week we're focused on growth and development in Arlington's and looking at Arlington's business revival. Talking specifically on what's considered Old Arlington rather than East Arlington. And we have assembled a large panel of experts on the topic. So City Councilman Ken Amaro is with us. His district for council includes Arlington. I'm sure we can talk East Arlington as well. Karen Nasrallah is right here next to me, the expert for Renew Arlington. That's the city's community redevelopment area. A returning guest, if you will. He's been on our podcast before, Steve Matchett, an expert on all of Old Arlington. He's the Old Arlington Inc. president. And Karen Mathis is with us, the editor of the Jax Daily Record, news partner of News 4 Jackson. Karen, you suggested that we talk about this. Your publication doing a lot of reporting on this. There is a lot happening in Arlington.
Well, there really is. And I'm a resident of Arlington. I'm in East Arlington, but I go to Old Arlington quite a bit, and I had relatives who lived in Old Arlington, and it's really been fascinating to watch some of the revival coming along. I mean, the bridge, the Matthews Bridge, the completion of it in 1953 is really what started Arlington as one of Jacksonville's first suburbs. And it just has so much history there. And that's where all of you are the experts. So, Karen, I'm going to throw it to you about what's happening there.
Okay, well, I oversee the Renew Arlington Community Redevelopment Area. And as you know, the redevelopment area is a comprehensive approach to redevelopment. It's a program that we follow that is provided by the state. We follow their rules. They give us funding, you know, how we guide our funding sources. It's the blueprint. And when we created the community redevelopment area, it took us about 2 years because it's a methodology that you follow that includes not just the residential community, but the commercial community and all those who want to be engaged.
Those things should work together, right?
They should. They should. And in this case, it did very well. We did a lot of community meetings out. JU hosted many of them. They were held at the public library. We went to certain businesses, to the churches out there. And within the parameters of the Florida Statute 163, which is what we community redevelopment areas have to follow, we provided what we could do, and we got back from the community what they wanted in their community and how they viewed revitalization of the area. So that's where we had to start. And once you have a CRA in place, then you follow your redevelopment plan and begin to implement it accordingly.
Yeah, Councilman, this CRA is a great tool. It's a great tool because it's focusing on 3 of the main corridors, Merrill Road, University, and a section of Arlington Road. And the reality is that once you revitalize those corridors, the hope is that it would spread throughout the neighborhoods that are connecting to those corridors. And it's a state statute. Some of the those who are being impacted are not that happy about the requirements that they now have to meet, but it is what it is. And if you want the community to be as nice as you remember what it was, then get on board and do what you're supposed to do. As Karen was describing, her residing in East Arlington and folks living in Old Arlington, I've lived there since 1975, and it was just Arlington then. Right. So I don't know at what point it became North and East and all that. You know, I don't recall where the separation occurred, but it was a very nice middle-class suburban community. And over the years, obviously, folks have moved and things have changed. Many of the properties have become rental properties, and so that the pride of home ownership is not there like it used to be. But I'm highly optimistic with the work that the CRA is doing, with the work that Old Arlington has been doing, that we're on the verge of a true revitalization and transformation is going to take place. In fact, it's already taken place. So.
Steve Matchett, why don't you jump in here and give us, again, some of your background and what you're focused on.
Well, Old Arlington Inc. was formed back in '93, modeling ourselves after RAP and SPAR, and as an organization that would champion historic preservation and community revitalization. This was early 90s. The decline had begun, and things were moving to shinier south sides, east sides. That's where the east came from, Ken, is when things started moving away from that.
They just call it East Arlington.
Well,
Because it was shiny and new, right?
that they sought that distinction.
Yeah.
And that distinction was even magnified as you went further east. The intercoastal West people wanted to be divorced from East Arlington. So, yeah, there was a lot of that pressure on the old Arlington and the infrastructure, the aging infrastructure, the decline over the last part of the 1900s and early part of this century. And so Old Arlington was first grabbing a lot of the history. We were losing our history. Arlington has a magnificent several hundred years of history. So we were documenting, grabbing that, historic markers, the Norman Studios, saving that. So our agenda was heavy historic preservation. In the last several years, that switched to the community revitalization. The CRA has come online. Mid-century modern architecture has become historic
And desired.
and desired. And just like Riverside with their architecture and Springfield, Arlington has mid-century to help rebuild its revitalization efforts. The CRA specifies a mid-century design. College Park is a mid-century design. So with those elements in place, we've had a very expansive agenda over the last year or so.
And that's transferred into business. You've got, College Park, a lot of people remember it as Town and Country Shopping Center. Well, now it's College Park, and I believe you said, Councilman, that it's fully leased, or just about fully leased.
Speaking with the property owners just a few weeks ago, I was told they have contracts on all the spaces, which is a good thing. There are two remaining pieces. One has to do with what years ago used to be a movie theater.
Right.
And is that going to be a gymnasium? What is it going to be? I don't think there's a final determination there. And then on the end of College Park, which, as you said, used to be Town and Center, there was initially a thought of putting some residential units there. Now it looks like it might be a hotel of some sort.
Really?
And that would be something new for especially that part of Arlington, Old Arlington, is the hotel, because they are out in East Arlington. But Steve, you're shaking your head.
Well, because that area was so rich in hotels and motels in the 60s, 70s, every single chain was
Thunderbird.
represented.
Well, and
Thunderbirds,
that
Howard
kind of-
Johnson's, Holiday Inns, Ramada.
And that brings up what's going on along the expressway. You have the old FBI offshore power systems, Jim's Place, and I'll let you all talk about what's going on there. And then, of course, you had the Thunderbird, which is gone, but now it's just sitting
vacant,
there. And then you have Regency Square Mall. So I will ask
All of
all
those
of
topics.
you to deal with that, because those are huge business drivers and economic development drivers.
Where the Thunderbird is, the ownership, absentee ownership, last piece of information I had was the property owners in Miami. There had been offers to acquire the property, and he clearly has no intention of selling. I say that because it was closing schedule and he never showed. But he has not expressed what the intended use of the property is.
Do I detect some frustration there? Is that what that is?
There is, because it's, again, locally some folks have offered to buy it because they saw the potential use of it.
Yeah.
Now it sits vacant. The good thing is that they raised the old property, which had become place for the unsheltered community and things of that nature. And now something needs to come out the ground. If it's going to be a catalyst for something, growth has to take place. So something is going to go there. Obviously, if I'm sitting in Miami owning the property, it's going up in value, and with the work that's taking place at College Park, it can't help but push that up. So something is going to go there eventually. Yeah, you mentioned Jim's Place. I drove by there earlier, and the remod of the FBI, former FBI building is near completion, but they may be stalled. I mean, just my intuition as to what's taking place, because initially when I met with those developers, a lot of the work was coming out of their pocket. And the reality is, you dump $20 million on one piece of the puzzle, you got to have some deep pockets to complete the rest. And if you don't, then things get stalled.
And as
just
we know,
so my intuition is
those project costs keep going
precisely.
up. Yeah, in this time.
And then the Regency Square, which is the great albatross. To the best of our knowledge, the purchase is still on track. Still on track.
Right. Right. There was a big pause.
Yeah.
as well.
And the current anchor there, the church, Impact Church,
Impact Church, yeah.
which is kind of isolated. It owns the property it's on, but it's dying for something to happen around it. And there've been a lot of conversation in my first year as a city councilman representing the district, and this is where you learn that money talk and everything else walks.
Yeah,
so
walks.
if you don't have the money.
Karen Nesrallah, why don't you jump in on this as well, on some of these different projects that we're talking about, maybe even pick up on Regency and what's happening in that area.
Well, Regency is outside of the CRA, so it's really not my focus. I will share with
we
you
can
what my
speak past
focus.
that then. Yes,
we can,
please.
because that's kind of stalled, as the council member said.
Yeah.
But what the CRA is focusing on right now is the zoning overlay. So June 25th, 2019, the City Council passed a zoning overlay. And it did a lot of things, predominantly on the commercial corridors. And the CRA is commercial corridors of University Boulevard from Arlington Expressway to Fort Caroline, a piece of Arlington Road, Merrill Road from JU, the gate of JU, all the way down to 295, and a piece of Fort Caroline. So those corridors are all commercial corridors and the boundary of the CRA. Within those, the zoning overlay, now they have to come into compliance with everything with the overlay. And that overlay mandates that they come into compliance with fencing, signage, landscape buffers. And the reason for those things came from pretty much the residential community. The residential community came to us and said, we take care of our properties, we maintain our properties, however, the commercial corridors to get to our properties are a mess. Help us clean them up. Is there something that the CRA can do? And it can. Fortunately, in our CRA plan, we did have the opportunity to create the overlay, which we did. They also said, we asked them what their greatest blight conditions were for those corridors, and they said sky blight, which is electric poles, lines, utilities, that kind of thing, signage, and they asked for boundaries behind commercial properties and the residential, those that abutted the residential properties, fencing, and then the landscape buffers. When you drive those corridors, as everyone around this table knows, there are a lot of unsightly and unsanitary lot. They're faulty lot sizes. They were created back in the 50s and built around over time. A lot of areas on University Boulevard, when you pull into a business, let's just say the donut shop, for instance, you pull in off of University Boulevard and you have to actually back off onto University Boulevard with traffic coming at you at about 55 miles an hour, regardless of what the speed limit is. It is that. When we studied that corridor, we were shocked at what the speeds were. So that is unlawful now. And so the landscape buffers are where you're going to see the biggest improvement, I think. And because we're going in with a 4-foot buffer, we're changing literally parking lots to be more functional and lawful, safer, walkable. You will see all those pole signs coming down. It's mandated that all pole signs come down. With the zoning overlay, we are going to be replacing those signs with monument signs. So we're using the CRA to fund all of these improvements. So those things that the overlay mandates be changed, fencing, signage, landscape buffers, the CRA, the agency board, which is our city council, said, that's great, you can mandate this, but the CRA is going to fund it.
And you don't have to be a sociologist or psychologist to visualize the impact of the aesthetics. If you improve the aesthetics, then people begin feeling good about their communities. And so when these things are done, the visuals, the aesthetics of the area will change significantly, that when you're driving home, you're like, you feel good about where you live.
Does that encourage more growth, more development, more investment in all of that?
Absolutely. The goals of the zoning overlay were to protect and enhance the residential community, to create sustainable commercial mixed-use projects that will not only service the existing neighborhood, but would be a local destination, especially from downtown and the areas around it, and also safe, walkable streets. That's what people want. They want teaming with retail, with restaurants, with new services that are neighborhood bound and they can walk or have right at their
And
fingertips.
that raises a question. We were talking about Springfield, we talk about San Marco, and when you talk about those and Avondale as historic districts, you have a street you can identify or a square you can identify as the center. What is identified as the center of Old Arlington?
It's a very good question.
That's a great
I
question.
think that if I was going to cast lots right now, I'd say University Boulevard, University Boulevard North, and that's why the College Park transformation at the entrance from the Matthews Bridge is so critical to the rest of what happens on University Boulevard. And the transformation of that piece of property right now, to me, it has energized the community. As you know, Karen, that several years ago, the Winn-Dixie, which was established there as a grocery store, had vacated the area, creating a food desert. And the developers of College Park went to, I guess, Southeastern Grocers and said, hey, you guys, what are you doing? Come on back. And they came back, and the energy that it brought. And so when you get off the bridge and you go on University North, you see something that's appealing, you see something that's functional, you see something that says, hey, maybe there's something in this community that is attractive to me.
I think we'd be remiss, I'm sorry, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't bring JU into this conversation.
What a great partner for
They
all of
are
these
economic
efforts, right?
engine, and that's kind of where I thought it was going to start, was closer to JU, because President Cost had brought in so many investors and was doing so many different things at JU, and his goal is to reunite the Arlington community with JU and the students and have the community come back to JU, which it had been separated with higher walls and fences. And so I thought it was going to start there. It surprised me and pleased me that it started at the gateway of Arlington at College Park.
And you just touch on something. Tim Cost, in his 10 years, has invested over $100 million on. But his concept and his priority is to make JU a part of and not separate of, and in doing so, he and the university have made a commitment to the future growth of Arlington. And I see university at some point, Steve, that it's going to be like going to one of these collegiate villages, these colleges where you come to visit North Carolina State, the University of Florida, and you drive in and you feel the energy of a collegiate environment, but you feel the stability of property owners who have invested in that area. And I see that down the road.
Steve, I know you were trying to get in on the conversation. Let's bring you back, maybe. Let's bring you back.
Go ahead,
A couple
Steve.
different points. Now I just trying to remember. First of all, I don't know if there's a center of Arlington so much as the gateway. I think the gateway is the center, just juxtapositioned. That gateway is a focus. It's coming off the bridge. We got a lot of looking and working to do on that. But the College Park, probably the biggest redevelopment piece in the CRA, is right there, right? And hopefully we get to keep the historic bank building there and some other pieces. That is your first home. And what we're overcoming is this perception of Arlington that 50,000 people get a day by not exiting the expressway and seeing the broken out windows and the blight along the expressway. And so changing that is trying to change the perception of, you get off that expressway, and what a couple of our tours did in the spring and stuff, And people are amazed at the residential neighborhoods, the tree canopies, the riverfront communities that dot all along there. It's just getting them, changing that perception, and that's what we're working on.
One of my children attended JU and graduated a few years ago, and you could see from the first steps where he was going, maybe I want to attend school here, the changes that have happened, not just on campus at Jacksonville University, but outside of that into Arlington.
That's
and
right.
obviously, it sounds like we're all kind of fans of Tim Cost and what he's been doing there to
he's
to
not
engage
finished.
the community.
He's not finished. Doctor of Osteopathy School is coming. There's a lot that's taking place. They strategically saw the need for our aging community and created that healthcare service on Dolphin Point, I think
Dolphin
is the name
Point.
of it.
It's north
And
of the
it's-
campus.
It's well appreciated within the aging community, and so they're not finished. And I mean, I'm in my capacity, I'm there to support them to get it done, because I believe it's good for Arlington.
Kim, what are some of the other stories that you've been covering that we can talk to our experts about here? There's a lot going on, is how I introduced it, and so let's get to some
And I
more.
think some of the elements within Arlington that we're keeping an eye on. You talked about the old bank buildings, so you might want to go in because that's a big economic developer. And I know the tall building at 900 University behind it.
Yes.
What is that? 10 floors, 10 stories, something like that. That's been sold, and I understand that may become housing. I'm hoping you all can talk
Little
about
mixed
that.
use, I
Mixed
believe.
use.
Right.
So there are a lot of properties that have been not really kept up, or worse, just really deteriorating, that have now they're being put back into the stock and redeveloped. And that's
Karen,
really
I
what you
think the
do.
CRA earmarked those
Yes.
for reuse, right?
They did,
All three of
absolutely.
those buildings
They
right
did.
there?
They did.
We have our own trio right there with the bank building, the 900 building, and the old, what was originally a Florida National Bank. It was last a Wells Fargo. And BBIF has that right now. But those three buildings right there are right there at the entranceway. And both, go ahead.
I'm just curious, what are they doing with that building?
Absolutely nothing right now. The BBIF
Yes.
building, or if you call it that,
Yeah.
I do not know, but I do know that its lobby is worth a trip in itself.
Yeah.
There must be a 20-foot mural of old Arlington on the wall in there that's still there.
And Karen, that's within the CRA boundaries.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So,
It is.
so have they?
They have not come in with an application yet for the mandatory compliance grant program.
I mean, it's a beautiful piece of property, and
yeah.
historically and physically as well. And I was driving by the other day, and I'm like, what the heck are they doing with this place? Nothing.
Right.
And the idea of revitalization is not to acquire the property and have it sit there and grow in value. The idea is to do something with it, to be a catalyst for everything around you. So I'm just curious what they're doing.
And it's the bookend to the gateway.
Right.
That
Right,
with the bank
exactly.
building and the 900 building, they are the bank building. If we can, as soon as we can get a response from the judge, it's
It's in litigation.
It's in litigation over the landmark designation, which we highly supported and is supported in our redevelopment plan. We're waiting for the judge to issue a judgment. When we get that, hopefully he will support the landmark, and when he does, we have two potential developers who want to redevelop it.
Well, this kind of comes to a point that we talked about before we came into studio and talked, the patience that is required to see some of the development happen. It's, hey, what are they doing right now? Well, there's a lot of waiting that can be involved, right?
Well, and that's very funny that you say that, because repeatedly when I go out into the community, I have to remind them, CRAs are marathon, they're not a sprint. And as soon as we get designated, regardless of wherever it is, wherever the CRA is, the community is like, where's the bulldozers? When's the work going to begin? They are 30-year programs for a reason. They take a long time to develop. You're going into areas that are undervalued, and it's sometimes hard to get financing, which is where we come in to help them and fill those gaps to spur redevelopment. So it is a game of patience. Just remember, CRAs are a marathon, not a sprint, and so it takes a while to get to that other end.
Thank you for reminding me, Karen. I'm one of those impatient guys. Come on, bring it.
We've watched a lot of historic neighborhoods that have evolved over, and it's taken decades to do.
Yeah.
And
It does.
so, you know, you are looking at decades. But you mentioned housing and the folks who live there. Housing is in demand. The houses go sell fairly quickly, do they not, in Arlington now, from what we heard at the panel discussion? And those houses are built to withstand hurricanes, I believe. These are concrete block homes, and they would sell for a lot of money in a lot of areas of town.
Karen, that's a good point, because property values, in spite of whatever you may conceive or think or conclude that this community is, the property values have gone up. Some of these cinder block homes that you speak of, 300,000, and when they were built, they were probably built for 60 or 70,000, and so the property values have gone up. My only disappointment, if I want to characterize it as that, is a significant, to me at least, and I'm sorry I can't quantify it now. But a significant percentage of this inventory stock has become rental.
Yeah.
And that to me, there are pros and cons. You know, I get it. You want to create an affordable housing marketplace, but at the same time, if the community is going to be strong, I think it has to be ownership. And the pride that comes with ownership.
How do you make that conversion?
I don't know, because many of the rental property owners are investors, and obviously they're making some money, and so they're not going to relinquish it to ownership as long as it produces an income stream.
Well, one of the things that I know Jack Stabler Record has reported on is about this area with the old office buildings and going into apartments. Karen Mathis, you guys have reported Baker Design Build filed civil engineering plans with the city back in June for the Arlington apartments. So this is, I think we were talking about the former FBI and Offshore Power Systems buildings there along the Arlington Expressway, right? Right. Ownership there, we understood, was working with the city to try and negotiate here and some assistance. It's like a 16-acre property and could be almost 800 apartments, as I understand it.
Yeah, they're working with the housing division. Joshua Hicks's office is who they're working with.
Right. So the first building is probably going to finish maybe at the end of the year, but the other two are having some flood plain issues. So hard to say where those two buildings will fall.
But it certainly points to what we're just talking about. There's a need for housing at different levels, and at least there's some progress happening there, right?
In my opinion, what I'm hearing is some of the younger professionals saying, again, like we've all heard, we're middle America. Where's that middle point? There's enough affordable in Arlington, I believe, in that area. Plenty of affordable housing. Where's that midpoint for young professionals who want to be close to downtown, close to the beach, close to the airport, all the things that they like, that's affordable to them, that want a nicer property. And they're either very expensive or they're affordable housing that they're not interested in or renting. They want to purchase. They're ready to purchase.
The definition of affordable today makes me chuckle because it's still pretty high, if you will. I mean, if you 80% the average mean income or whatever the standard is, Karen, correct me, and you're still spending $1,200, $1,500 if you're renting for a one-bedroom apartment, and I don't know if that's affordable, but that's where affordable is now.
Well, one thing that I've been seeing more of in the past several years are townhomes and the condo concept being built in and around Arlington, and that was fairly new because right across the expressway from the FBI building, or close across, is it
Rivergate?
Rivergate, and those are townhomes.
They're old Publix.
Successful, and all the public. One of the original Publixes in Jacksonville was built there, and then if you go up the South Side Connector, there's housing all along the west side of that. There are townhomes, but single-family homes. And when I first moved to East Arlington, when I would come down the connector, when you look, you look to your right heading down, and it was all the old, phosphate mining?
Say, Humphrey's Gold Mine.
Nothing. And so now to see that filled with housing and townhouses is a real change, And then on the other side of the connector, there are also townhomes, but there's a lot more retail in that area too. So seeing more retail means that the commercial developers are seeing an opportunity to sell.
And that's what create communities. As you said something earlier about the walkability and the convenience of having those support systems around you makes it work. I mean, that's why Springfield, Avondale, San Marco have experienced the measure of success. I mean, you can walk down the street and I mean, all of your retail outlets will not be there, but there'll be something that would satisfy you. There are places you can go and grab a cup of coffee or dinner or whatever. And I think we're all looking for those opportunities within our communities.
Well, the opportunity to get all of us together and talk through these different things was really welcome. And again, in no small part because of Karen Mathis, our partner here with Jack's Daily Record. I appreciate the suggestion. I appreciate all of you kind of leaning into your insights, your experience. And obviously, I think there's a little bit of a love for Arlington as well as we talk through that. So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So we're going to wrap up here. And just so you know, if you've been listening or watching, it was Jacksonville City Councilman Ken Amaro, Karen Nasrallah from Renew Arlington, the city's community redevelopment area, Steve Matchett is the president of Old Arlington Inc., and Karen Mathis, the editor of Jack's Daily Record. Thanks for joining us for this week in Jacksonville Business Edition. You should like, follow, or subscribe wherever you get your podcast because new episodes drop in every Thursday at 9 a.m. Thanks for joining us today.